This episode of Geniuses of Copywriting is proudly sponsored by the GaryHalbertLetter.com. In the modern world of copywriting, all roads lead to Gary Halbert, and at the GaryHalbertLetter.com you will find the free issues of his newsletter, which has inspired and helped thousands of copywriters hone their skills and become better sales writers.
Welcome to the Geniuses of Copywriting Podcast, a peek into the minds and strategies of the world's greatest copywriters, marketers, and persuasion experts. And now, here's your host, Brian Casangina.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Geniuses of Copywriting Podcast. I've got a really interesting, really fascinating guest on today. He's a guy who's I know who's going to have a lot of really interesting stories and tales to tell about his experience in the marketing. Or if you're connected to him on social media, you've probably seen some of them already. But I'm really excited to not just dig into that, but learn the marketing lessons that he's perfected in, and he's now sharing with other people. So I want to give a quick introduction to Dave Dee. For 25 years, he's been helping small business owners attract more clients, sell more of their services. Dave was a magician in his past life, so he somehow managed to make the leap from professional magician and mind reader to one of the premier marketers in the scene today. So that's really fascinating. And he's a guy who, Dave, I'll let you sort of talk a bit more about yourself, but I know that
Sure.
If you haven't seen what Dave's capable of, he's really good at creating marketing systems and campaigns, and especially selling from the stage, speaking from the stage and selling products. And he sold as much as $300,000 in an hour, millions of dollars over a longer period of time. And if you're looking to learn how to generate that kind of cash flow, then Dave Dee is your man. So welcome to the show, Dave, and thanks for coming on for us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, it's great to be here. I'm excited. And so as I say in all these podcast interviews, we have to make this one the highest value, the best one for your listeners.
Yeah, let's do
it. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Excellent.
So I want to be guest number one.
Guest number one, 100%. You will be.
That's right. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here, and it's interesting you mentioned selling from the stage and crafting presentations that sell, because it's very, very similar to writing great copy. It's very similar because if you think about it, one-to-many selling, which is really defined as speaking on a webinar or in person or something like that, and selling to a group, copywriting is the same thing. Right. So you're writing a sales letter, or you're writing a marketing, a website that you're going to put online, or you're going to send out direct mail. You're still selling one to many. And the structure that I use in my presentation is really a copywriting structure, because long before I learned to sell from the stage, I learned to write copy, by studying some of the greats, Dan Kennedy, Gary Halbert, all of those guys. And I took those skills and I just applied my copywriting skills to presenting from the stage. So it's really, really fascinating. It's almost the same.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like, the signal has to travel all the way down under. So that's one of the only problems. Let me just close my browser and stuff like that, and then hopefully that clears things up. So let's power on anyway, because I'm really interested to find out a bit more about you, your story, where you came from. I know that you were a professional magician and mind reader in the past, which is really fascinating to me, and that's part of your story. So is that kind of where you started in the business world?
Yeah, that's where I really started in the marketing world. So we're all taught, if you get really good at what you do, if you get good at your craft, you'll be successful. That's what we're taught. And that's what everyone is taught, including magicians. Practice, get really good. And I was really struggling, and maybe I was good, maybe I wasn't good at my craft, but I was only doing about 3 shows a month. And then I went to one of the big, they were called the success seminars back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And run by a guy by the name of Peter Lowe. And the last guy in the program, literally the last guy after the big keynote speaker spoke, was a guy by the name of Dan Kennedy. Never heard of him before. And he said something which really changed the course of my life. And he said, it is far more important to be a master marketer than it is to be a master of your craft. Now, what he wasn't saying is you don't have to be a master of your craft. That wasn't the point. But none of that matters if you don't get good at marketing. And so I bought Dan's course. I bought Jay Abraham's stuff. I just started using a lot of marketing material and really dove into it, and started changing my focus to being to be a marketer of entertainment services as opposed to an entertainer. And that change of perspective was really important. So I wrote sales letters that I sent out. I placed ads that had headlines. Everyone else had Joe Blow magician, right? I had make your party unforgettable. So just very, very, very rudimentary copywriting. But in a market where nobody was doing it, you're king, right? I think Halbert once
the land
said
of the blind.
The one-eyed man is right. Yeah, exactly. I know he was paraphrasing it from somebody else, but so that's what happened. So the bottom line is, once I started learning copywriting and direct response marketing, I went from doing 3 shows a month to averaging 25 shows a month in 90 days. In my 4th month, I did 57 shows. In a year, I had paid off tens of thousands of dollars of debt. I don't have the exact number, but I know it was about 70,000. And this is being a magician, by the way, right? And so,
how much do magicians usually make?
Oh God, nothing. So I was making 6 figures as a magician, which is now there's people who do more than that.
Yeah.
David Copperfield does about 47 million a year, but on average. And so for a magician, that was good. And then I put together a course teaching other entertainers the marketing side, the business side of business. And then because of my success, Dan Kennedy actually invited me to speak on one of his stages, and for one of his big annual events. And he said to me, now here's the deal though, you got to sell something afterwards. And so the way, just so inside baseball for people who know, the way that this works is the promoter gets half of your sales. So the promoter gathers the audience, you go up there and sell, and then you get half and they get half, which is very, very fair because they're putting you in front of their audience. And so I was like really cocky, Brian. I was like, I'm an entertainer, man. This is how hard can this be? So this is before I knew how to sell from the stage. And so I went up there and I delivered a presentation in front of, I was on main stage because I was kind of Dan's golden boy at the time, right? Because it was an interesting story that I used his marketing principles. And I had the audience laughing and they were clapping, man, they were entertained. Then I did my close. And for people who are not watching the video, I just did air quotes around close because it was not very good. And I was expecting there to be a stampede, people running to the back of the room to buy the thing that I was selling.
But there wasn't.
No, there was no stampede. The only people going to the back of the room were leaving to go to the bathroom, man. And it was bad. It was embarrassing. And I was like really down because I'm thinking I'm going to make 6 figures on this thing. And I also let, one of my mentors down. So then I decided to really dive in the same way I learned how to market myself and my service. I dove into learning how to speak to sell. I invested in myself. I got coaching. I bought courses, and then I just went out there and I did it. Just to tie this all up, a couple of years later, after mastering my selling, because I started getting invited to speak on stages all around, literally all around the world, to tell my story. And I wasn't a celebrity speaker, so I wasn't getting paid. So I needed to learn how to sell. And so a couple of years later, actually Bill Glazer, who bought Dan's company and turned it into GKIC, invited me to speak again, but this time not on the main stage. So typically when you bomb on the main stage, they don't let you back on the main stage. So I was in a breakout room. Yeah, I was in a breakout room first thing in the morning. And I had maybe 100 people in the room, but I was armed with my new system that I had practiced and that I put together for creating presentations and delivering them in a way that would motivate people to run to the back room.
Yeah.
And I did my presentation, and I sold $330,000 in a breakout session with about 100 people in the room. And I was by far the top seller at that event, even from speakers who were speaking from main stage. And Bill had actually sold the company again at that point to an investors group. And so Bill was no longer with the company, but I was still a speaker at this event. The CEO, the new CEO of the company, obviously took notice of the guy that just did 300,000 in sales. Because they were corporate, right? So they had never experienced anything like that. They had speakers come, no one was selling anything. Yeah. And so she actually invited me to go to lunch with her. And she said, we'd like you to come and work with us. And at first I said no, because I didn't want to work for somebody else. And then she says, well, what would it take? And I said, I want the position that Bill Glazer had, which was really the face of the company after Dan. Yeah. And she says, well, send me a proposal. So I made this outrageous proposal, which I thought, there's no, like, I'm not moving to Chicago. I'm working out of my house. And this is before people were working out of their house, right? And this, this big amount of money, plus I want commission on myself, all of this stuff. And she came back and said, okay. And so that's what got me started. I was the chief marketing officer, hired as a chief marketing officer for the company founded by Dan Kennedy, which was the guy that I saw years ago, right? Which started my thing. So it was kind of cool. But to show you how non-corporate I was, and I'm not kidding when I tell you this, we're at a meeting and she says to me, Dave, we're going to make you a C-level executive, And I literally say to her, Betty, I don't want to be a C-level executive. I want to be an A-level executive. And at that point, I think she's probably thinking, holy crap, we made a big mistake here. And whether or not they did, I don't know. But at the first board meeting, I couldn't believe it. They're going over, it was the most miserable, because I had never been at a board meeting with investors and things like that. And I'm like, when are we going to talk about marketing? What is going on here? They were talking about everything else other than the stuff that brought in money. And I just couldn't believe it. But in the 4+ years that I worked with them, it was cool because I got to work very closely with Dan. I actually created a ton of product. And what was really cool is redoing the magnetic marketing product. So Dan sold it from the stage, but they never did it from a webinar. And so I actually took on that task and redid it myself, selling it as a webinar. And we did 1.5 million in just about a year and a half in automated sales from this. And so there was really good experiences there, but corporate is very, very different than entrepreneurial.
And, it's interesting how the whole landscape of the company changed. because these corporate people, obviously they've heard of Dan somehow, but so they wouldn't have been fans like you and I, and fans of marketing as well. So how did that play out? Like, how did you marry up your direct responsiveness, which is all about results first, with the corporate folks who they're less concerned about what sells and maybe more concerned about what looks good.
Yeah, I didn't marry it up very well. So, because my whole thing was, okay, well, first of all, we're a direct response company teaching direct response.
Yeah.
Right. So, I had a lot of battles. I had a lot of battles with them. There was 3 different CEOs and presidents at the time that I was there. One of them said to me, they didn't like, so whenever we were doing a promotion, I often wrote the emails in Dan's voice. So
Yeah.
Just to give people a background, I created almost all of the products that were released while we were there. So I would write the scripts, and then I would go and I would interview Dan, and we would do an interview type of, including the remake of Magnetic Marketing. And so thinking that if it was my business and I treated it like it was my business and sales were low, we had to create stuff to sell. But I had a CEO once say to me, he did not like the story-based emails that I was writing. And yeah, I know I know every copywriter on here is laughing. He's like, people don't want to read the story, right? Yeah. They just want the point. And so these longer emails with the story don't work, right? Just we want short emails with just the facts.
Yeah.
And I said, well, but these emails are producing really good numbers. And I'm fine testing, right? Let's test a short word. Maybe he's right, but this is the mentality. He said to me, Dave, I need you to understand something. I have a certification in email marketing. Yeah. And so I looked at him and I said, well, you know what? I have a certification in making money with email. Yeah. So
the two very different things.
There was a lot of there was a lot of that. I was the highest paid, other than Dan, I was the highest paid person there because of the commission structure. So none of the CEOs like that, right? No, how come you're making more than me? Well, because I'm the one bringing in all of the money.
Exactly.
And so there was a lot of battles because there was just different priorities and different beliefs about direct response, and they didn't like direct response, which is a problem if you're a direct response company and teaching direct response. But I honed my skills from I honed my skills even further, speaking from the stage, creating programs, and quickly designing presentations and launches. And so if you want, we can go any direction that you want. We can keep we can keep with the stories about GKIC, or I'm also happy to share my basic structure of creating a presentation that sells, whatever you think would be most valuable to your audience.
Yeah, I think let's save some of the GKIC stories for the second and third hour. But there's a lot of good stories, but yeah,
I've
read some of them on social media. But the structure that you're talking about is something that I think would be really useful, because like you mentioned before, the principles from copywriting and selling from the stage from a webinar are very closely matched.
Yeah, and it was interesting, just to show you, I was speaking at an event, and there was an A-list copywriter in the audience. And one of these times I got to tell you the story about when Halbert was in the audience.
Yeah,
that was funny. So A-list copywriter, and after I'm done, he actually stands up and he says, "Oh my God, what you just talked about was the best copywriting formula I've ever heard," honestly. So it's really the same thing. And in fact, when I write a sales letter or something like that, I still follow my basic speaking formula. So let's go over that so people can actually really get something here that they can use. So the first thing, and I'll actually relate it to copywriting. So the first thing is the coming up with the title. What's the title of your presentation? So the title, if you think about it, is really the headline. So you need a powerful title, right? So we need a really great headline in our copy to grab our readers' attention. So we need a really great title for our presentation if we want people to attend our presentation, or if we want them to, if we're doing a webinar, for example, to register. So it starts with the title. So you have to develop a really, really hot title that appeals to your target market audience, that also appeals to your ideal prospects, and also alleviates the people who are not your target audience. So as you know, with lead generation, everyone thinks more leads, more leads, more leads. That's not necessarily the case. We want to dissuade people who are not right for us, right? So we want to craft that title. So you've got your title. Then the next section of your presentation is your opening, which is really super important, because your opening is designed to grab your audience by the throats and pull them in. And you really have about a minute to 2 minutes to make that happen, especially when you're online. So if you're doing a webinar, because people will they'll start surfing the internet. They'll just click off if you're not interesting. So you need a really powerful opening, which, if you think about it, you need a really powerful opening, the first sentence of your, right? What is the hook? What is gonna draw them in? And typically what I do is I'll give you a little formula so people can take it and use it. Is I say, in the next blank minutes, so in the next 45 minutes, you're going to discover a usable 1, 2, 3 step-by-step strategy for the thing that they want. Okay. So you can, the outcome. So there's the thing that they want, but then there's the transformation, which is the emotional thing that they want. Right. So it's not, so you make more money. Well, making more money is an outcome. It's not a transformation. What is that making more money going to do for them? That's the transformation. So you've got your outcome, your transformation, without having to, then the thing that they don't want to have to do in order to get the outcome and the transformation that they desire, right? And so you grab their attention. The next thing is you want to let them immediately know that they're in the right place. Hey, this is for you if. And then what you do is you describe their current situation. So the only reason someone's watching your presentation is they have a problem that they want to have solved. So we want to let them know that we understand what their problem actually is, that we understand them. Because when people feel understood, they're more likely to listen to you, right? So very, very powerful. You talk about the problems that they have, their current situation. Then after you do that, so now the person, you've had this dynamic opening, which you've talked about what they're going to discover, which is what they want. Then you showed them that you understand them and the problems that they have. Then the next thing is to future pace. And future pacing is a strategy where you get someone to step into the future and see their life, see, hear, and feel their life. Now, most speakers, what they do is they only future pace the positive. And so the little phrase that I use for that, by the way, is, and this is it's a wonderful transition from to this section, is imagine you could wave a magic wand.
Yeah.
And then you paint the ideal scenario of how their life could be if they take action on what you're about to share with them. But then the second part of future pacing is to paint the opposite picture, because as Tony Robbins talked about a lot, we're motivated by two twin forces, pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
And so in my structure, my presentation, I'm constantly bouncing the audience between those two emotions, between those two states of pain and pleasure. So, hey, I just painted the beautiful scenario for them. Now I am painting the dark scenario, and I'm making it worse than it is. I'm making it like it could be. If you don't do this, this is a scenario, right? This is how and so now the audience is really engaged. The next section of your presentation is designed to tell them your core story, your origin story. And it's one of the most important pieces in the entire presentation. So I told a version, if people go back and listen to this, a very, very short version of my origin story at the top of this, right? So people can understand where I came from. Now, if I was doing that and I was designed to sell something, I would have related it more to the audience, even though I did a little bit. I talked about how I typically say, well, I got invited to speak on stages because smart business owners understood that I was selling a service just like anyone else's service, right? I had to generate leads. I had to close sales because an objection that somebody could have is, well, yeah, you were a magician. What does that have to do with me? I'm a chiropractor. And the truth is, really the same thing. It's just marketing is marketing is marketing. Right? So you tell a story, even though you're talking about yourself, you're relating it to the audience. That's a really important point. You're not just talking about yourself because nobody really cares. You're talking about it so it relates to the audience. And if you are selling a product that you're a product of, so let's say I was selling to a group of entertainers or a group of people who wanted to be marketers, one of the things that is really, really important that you do is that you talk about the pain part of your story. So if you're selling like, hey, I did this thing and now I'm super successful because I did this thing, what almost everybody does who speaks is they show themselves in their house by the beach and driving their Porsche and all of that. And that is actually okay to do, and you should do that. But that's the after part of your story. You want to let people understand that you were where they were, right? So to move people to where you want them to go, you've got to meet them where they are. And so I spent a lot of time. Now, I didn't do it here because I'm not selling anything. This wasn't a presentation designed to sell anything. But I spent a lot of time in the pain part of my story, right? Struggling, not having any money, being deep in debt. Because the person who, for that particular presentation, that's where they are. And if I just say, oh, look at, I'm super, they can't relate to that. They may want that success. And so you do show them that success, but it's better if you show them, hey, this is where I was. I was where you were, Brian. And now I'm here. And I'm going to share with you how I got from here to here. Now they're engaged. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the next thing is, so now we've done our opening. All of that is our opening. Now we move into the center section of the presentation, which is the content section. And I used to call it the teaching section, right? But that gave people the wrong impression about what's happening here.
Yeah.
What's really happening is you're delivering content that sells. You repeat that. You're delivering content that sells. So you are going to share information, but you're going to share information, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. You're going to share information in such a way that it creates the internal desire and motivation inside your audience to need to take the next step, which is buy your product or service or schedule an appointment with you. So if you're an attorney, right, you're not selling your attorney services from the stage, but you're selling to get people to schedule an appointment. So what the way to do this and deliver good content, because what's interesting is when I speak to sell, I'm almost always the top salesperson, platform salesperson, but I'm also almost always one of, if not the highest rated speaker.
Interesting.
Now, how can that possibly be? Well, it's how you deliver content. So I'm not saying you're not going to deliver good content. You are. You're going to deliver excellent content. But this whole idea about just delivering content, and then what most people do is they deliver a lot of content thinking that they're delivering value. Then they rush the close and they tack a close onto the end. No, the content, just as in a sales letter, needs to lead to the close. Everything you say, everything you do, from the minute you step out on stage, whether that's a virtual or in-person stage, leads to them wanting to buy the product. Just as in a sales letter, the entire Joe Sugarman, I forget which book it was, but went over his copywriting. He calls it the slippery slide.
Yeah,
right? It's a slippery slide. So he says when someone's reading your ad, they're at the top of the slide, and it's like a grease slide, and your copy should make it so they can't stop until they get to the end of that slide, which is to take the action you want them to take. It's the same thing in selling one-to-many. And so what you're doing is you're delivering, here's the key, 3 pieces of content, no more than 3. People can remember 3. It also forces you to condense what you're going to talk about. Because if you deliver too much content, you're not delivering value, you're doing the opposite of that. Because 2 bad things happen. The first bad thing that can happen is the audience gets overwhelmed and confused. If they're overwhelmed and confused, they don't take action. The second bad thing that happens is that you can leave them with the false impression that they have everything that they need in order to get the result. And unless you're selling the most basic thing on the planet, and then you don't need to be doing any of this, that's not true. But if I believe that, I don't need anything else. This guy gave me everything, right? So now here's how you do it. 3 pieces of content, and there's a number of ways to do it. I'll give you 2 though. The first is tell people what to do, not how to do it. Here's what you need to do, but not how to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then give them useful but incomplete information. So what we're doing here is, even though I'm not selling anything, it's exactly what I'm doing. So if you go back, I gave you a little template, but then I said, well, you got a future pace, but I really didn't teach you how to do it. I said, you got to develop a really good origin story, but I didn't give you any details about how to do it. So teach them what to do, not how to do it. Useful but incomplete information. If somebody rewinds just a little bit, they'll hear what I just said, which I said there are many ways to do it. But let me cover 2 here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, by the way, if I was actually selling something, if I was selling a course or a workshop or something like that, I would say, okay, so there are 5 ways to do it. Now, we don't have time to go over all 5, but let me give you 2 of them.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to know? If they're good, 3. I want to know the other ways to do it. Okay. Yeah. So now you deliver the content. The content is the only purpose of the content is designed to get the prospect to say, this guy's an expert. I need what this person's selling. That's the only purpose of the content. Forget about this whole delivering, giving them your best stuff and all. No, don't give them your best stuff. Tell them what to do, not how to do it. Give them useful but incomplete information, right? By the way, that's valuable because people don't even know what to do, Brian, let alone how to do it. So you are delivering good value.
That is value, yeah.
Because they don't even know what to do, right? They have no clue what to do. So now you transition into the close. Now your transitions are really important. And this is where most people mess up. So, well, they mess up everywhere, but this is a real problem. We've all seen people transition either in a sales letter where it's awkward, where it's abrupt, where it's jarring from the stage. Yeah, it's jarring from the stage. What they're doing is they speed up or they slow down or they tighten up.
You can
just tell it's like sirens are going off.
Yeah.
He's about to sell me something. He's about to sell me something. Just as a quick aside, GKAC story. Speaking of sirens going off. So there was a lot of disgruntled people in the company, and one of them was a meeting planner, and they told the meeting plan, they fired the meeting planner, and the meeting planner's gift to me was, so I used to do these 2-day boot camps for the company where we would teach principles of direct response. And so this one was in Chicago in the middle of the summer, and it's hot in Chicago in the middle of the summer, like really hot. And so we're walking with, not the meeting planner, because she has since been fired. We're walking through the hotel because I want to look at the meeting space. We keep walking, we keep walking, we keep walking. We go down this hallway. Then we go outside. And in the middle of the parking lot, this is not an exaggeration. In the middle of the parking lot, Brian, there is a wedding tent where they have weddings.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Across the parking lot into the wedding tent. And wedding tents are not super bright. Now, it was air conditioned, but we are still in Chicago outside in a parking lot. So the audience is exhausted because they're hot.
Yeah.
Which is not, they're like kind of sleepy, not ideal selling environment.
No.
So I'm going into the portion of the boot camp where we're actually selling something. And literally right before I go into the close, remember, and we're right out in the parking lot by the highway. Police cars and fire engines, with sirens going. I mean, the timing couldn't have been any more perfect. Like, oh my God, hey, warning everybody, warning, Dave's about to close. He's about to close. And then on top of it, this is not an exaggeration. They started repaving with tar part of the other parking lot. So all of that odor was coming into the tent. So it was, I still closed, by the way.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
So, So now we're moving into your transition into the close is really important. Okay. So how do you move from the content section smoothly into the close so it's seamless? So that's super important thing. You really need a great transition. Now, because this is an advanced group, right? Let's just analyze what I just did right there. For those that are astute, I just told you what to do, not how to do it, right? What did I just say? I just said, you need to develop a really smooth transition into the close so it's seamless. I didn't tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. How do you go about doing that? So if I was selling something, absolutely, I would say, for example, in the second day of our workshop, let's say I'm selling a workshop, doesn't matter. It could be an online course, it could be whatever. In the second day of the workshop, in the afternoon, we're going to go over and we're going to script through all of the different transitions. So how do you transition from the opening into the telling your core story? How do you transition from the core story into the teaching? And then we're going to create together the transition from the teaching section, the content section, into the close, so it's seamless. You see? So the only way for them to, what we're doing is we're creating all of these open loops, as they're called. And the only way that someone can close those loops is to buy whatever it is that you're selling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the only way they can get closure on the open loop.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's almost a pressure, like, man, first we got to convince people that what you have is valuable. But then if they want it, the next thing is you've got to create that desire in them to really, really, really desire it. So now you transition into your close. So you do your close. And again, I still see this. It's amazing. Even from people who should know better, they're still talking about features. They're still, there's something I call the hierarchy of persuasion. We kind of went over a little bit. At the lowest level are features. So features are, if you're selling an online course, that there's 6 video modules.
Yeah, module
that
1,
you
module
get a
2.
handout.
Yeah.
Yeah, module 1, module 2, all of that. If you're selling a service that your meeting is done by Zoom, it's 45 minutes long. All of those are features, and you should mention those, but that shouldn't be the focus point. Nobody cares. Nobody wants 6 video modules. They want the outcome that those are going to get. So you've got features at the lowest level of the hierarchy of persuasion. You've got benefits, and again, this is copywriting 101. And most people only talk about features and benefits, but as we talked about, there's 2 other levels. The next level is, okay, so we got all of these benefits. What is the outcome going to be for me? What's my ultimate outcome going to be? But the highest level is what my transformation is going to be. How am I going to be different from this? Right? So how am I going to be different from having for example, on a presentation that I know sells? How is that going to be different? Well, I'm going to have more money. I'm going to be able to make big chunks of money very, very quickly. Okay, great. Well, what does that do for you? Well, that gives you freedom, right? That gives you freedom. That gives you time to spend with your family. That gives you that allows you to go on the trips that you want to go on. So there's a whole, whatever the transformation is for your audience.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about during your close, not just the features, not just the benefits, but the outcome and the transformation. And then you want to obviously give them whatever the investment is, whatever the price is. Then guarantee it if you can guarantee it. And by the way, you don't necessarily need to guarantee it, which is a big fallacy. I don't guarantee any of my stuff anymore. Right. And I'm charging, pretty substantial numbers. But again, a lot of it depends upon who you're attracting in the first place and what you're selling. Right. But that's a whole other topic for another conversation. But in most cases, you're going to have a guarantee, and then you're going to add on some bonuses. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you're selling an info product or if you're selling a consultation. You should still add on bonuses, right? So here's some additional things that you're going to receive. And there's a whole strategy behind bonuses. We can have that conversation at another point. And then you reclose your call to action, just as Gary Halbert taught many years ago. You need to tell people specifically what you want them to do. Exactly. Specific. It's, again, this is basic copywriting. If you leave any ambiguity, so I mean, Halbert described it as, if you want someone to get up off their couch, and this shows you how old this advice is, but I'm paraphrasing, but if you want them to get off their couch, tell them to get off your couch, stand up, walk over to the phone, pick up the receiver, hold out your index finger, and dial these numbers, right? Yeah. So really step-by-step instructions, not vague. Then, if you want to create a stampede to the back of the room or to your order form, then after they think the close is completely done, you add in one extra fast action bonus. And this fast action bonus should be either timed, like you got to get it today, you've got to be one of the first 20 people, whatever it is, and it's got to be something that's really hot that they want, that they really want. And if you do that, and then you close again, and if you do all of that, you will. And again, it's a copywriting formula. You could follow that exact formula I just gave you to write a kick-ass sales letter. You will have a stampede to the back of the room buying whatever it is you're selling. And I got to tell you, there's nothing. It's a thrilling feeling when you see people literally running to the back of the room, or getting up, or online, just seeing orders come in, boom, 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 one after the other. And that's basically it. One other thing. You want to create, if you remember Halbert, obviously you can tell I was heavily influenced by Gary Halbert. He created an offer sheet, a benefit sheet, a feature sheet, and then you also created an objections sheet. So what you want to do, just like with copywriting, because if we're sending out a sales letter, or people coming online to read our sales letter or watch our VSL or whatever it is, unlike one-on-one selling, they don't have the opportunity to give you their objections. So you need to answer all of your objections, all the objections someone has to not buying inside of your presentation. Yeah. And so that's the other thing you need to do. You need to layer in the answers to any objections that people have. And that's how you develop a presentation that sells.
Well, that's an incredible structure for a presentation that worked great for a sales letter. I can totally understand that A-list copywriter standing up if you present something like that and saying that's a great copywriting formula, because it is. But it totally describes every great sales presentation that I've seen from stage, and I've seen the stampede go to the back of the room, and I've been among that stampede many times, and it really works. So, and that's exactly what they were doing. So if anyone, like a lot of people who watch this podcast are probably wanting to do webinars. So webinars are a great application of this whole structure. So like you said, it's really good.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a little bit what we didn't have a chance to talk about today. There's the second piece is the actual delivery of the presentation, which almost nobody talks about, but it's just as important, if not more important than the structure of the presentation. How do you deliver a webinar?
Yeah.
Not technically, how do you deliver it? How do you deliver it?
Yeah.
Right? You've got your presentation. Now you've got the delivery of your presentation. So why does one magician do a trick and it gets a response? Another magician does the exact same trick and people are giving him a standing ovation. It's the presentation of it. So there's differences between presenting on stage and presenting on a webinar, but the actual presentation structure is exactly the same.
Yeah, if you want, as long as you want to sell something. If you're just trying to give information or teach, then it's completely different. But if you want those sales to come in at the end of the presentation, then that's the structure to follow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
So that's an amazing template for anybody to follow. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. I think we've got time for one last thing. You did mention and I'm a huge Gary Halbert fan as well. So I'd really like to hear the story that you alluded to before about when Gary was in the audience. Because if I've spoken at events where John Carlton has been in the audience, and that was nerve-wracking. And I can't imagine if the Prince of Print was in the audience watching me speak. So I'm interested to find out what happened there.
Yeah. So I was actually speaking at an Agora event. Agora is a very large financial publishing company, very, very large. It's like the 800-pound gorilla in direct response. And I was speaking at one of their conferences, and Halbert was also speaking. Halbert was like the headliner. I was in a breakout, and Halbert happened to come to mine.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about direct response marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I got Halbert, right? And I'm kind of nervous, right? Just like you would, like, because it's just like the guy who's sitting there.
Yeah.
And at one point, Halbert stands up, raises his hand, stands up and says, "I've got something to say," in the middle of my freaking presentation. And I'm like, oh, this might not be good. And he says, "I've been to a lot of the speakers, listened to a lot of the speakers around here. And I got to tell you, I won't use Halbert's exact language because you'll have to put a mature on the podcast. But basically he says, I've been to listen to a lot of the speakers, and this is the only effing guy who's made any sense to me." And he sits back down. So I was like, "Whoo!"
That's hell of an endorsement.
Yeah. It was a good endorsement. Of course, I was teaching fundamentals of direct response, a lot of which I learned from him.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so obviously it made sense. But
your stress levels would have gone right down.
When Halbert stands up in the middle of your direct response presentation, yeah. So, oh my God, yeah,
that would make anybody nervous. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for sharing that and the structure as well. That's really valuable, and I love all the GKC stories. So keep them coming. I know that you've got a lot to offer people, particularly on this podcast. I've got a lot of mid-level advanced copywriters and marketers and so forth. So how can they find out more about what you do? Because you've given us a basic broad overview of the structure, but you've got a ton more to teach. So how can they take the next step?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The next step is really simple. If people like what we talked about here and they're really interested in selling, because my whole thing is selling, right? If that's what you're interested in, selling more of your products or services quicker and easier, you want to go to davedee.com. That's DAVEDEE.com. And I've got a really great training there it's called the Client Attraction Machine. And you want to sign up for that. And you will also get what I call my daily D-mail. You get it, Brian?
Yeah.
D-mail as opposed to email.
It makes sense.
Yeah, but super creative there. Super creative. Yeah, so you get my daily D-mail, which is it's entertaining. Well, if you didn't think this was entertaining, you're probably not going to like my email, so you probably shouldn't sign up.
Sure.
But it gives you really good tips, tricks, and strategies in an entertaining fashion about how to sell more of your products or services quicker and easier without spending more money on marketing. So that's
exactly right. And
so go to davedee.com.
Yeah, well, that's me. Yeah, perfect thing. Sign up for the newsletter, and learn more about. Like you say, if you enjoyed this podcast, then it's just a taste of what you'll get there. So if you're listening on iTunes, I will put a link to Dave's site on the podcast episode at geniusesofcopywriting.com, and there'll be a link there. And as soon as I have this episode up, Dave will officially be number one on the podcast. So might want to take a screenshot of that, but yeah. So go to geniusesofcopywriting.com and click on Dave's pick to get a link to his website and sign up for his free emails, through D-mails, and so get the terminology correct. I highly recommend you do that because the reason I invited Dave on was partly for inside stories on GKIC, which I find most entertaining, but only because they're in the Dan Kennedy world, which you all know and love, but also because the whole structure that Dave has given us today is just a small taste of what he's got to teach with. So I'm sure you're really looking forward to that. Go to geniusesofcopywriting.com and click on Dave to get that link. And so I'd love to have you back on the show sometime, Dave. So I really appreciate your time and sharing.
I'd love to, man. I'd love to. We could talk about some more of the GKIC corporate craziness, as well as how we created. I think what would be really interesting to your audience is I created a 4-hour launch model that we did multiple times, including how we recreated. If anyone has products to sell, this is a really, really good model, and you don't want to do a 3-week long launch. You want to launch it
4
really
hours,
quickly. The first time, with magnetic marketing, when we redid magnetic marketing, that's how we did it, Dan and I.
Interesting, yeah.
And I think we did 750,000 or something like that in 4 hours. So that's something that we could go over for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to beat those numbers. Based on extrapolate those numbers, it beats beats John Reese's $1 million day by miles.
Reese is pretty good. Reese is a pretty smart dude.
Yeah.
Pretty smart dude. I've learned a lot from John.
Yeah. He's awesome. And he's actually the one that gave me the idea for this podcast in the first place. So full credit to him. He even came up with the name. So
yeah. Oh, really?
That was John. Yeah.
Wow.
When he used to have a Facebook account, he commented on something and said I should start a podcast and call it this, and so I did.
Well, it worked out well for everybody, didn't it? Because you're helping a lot of people, which is outstanding. Yeah, which is great.
I certainly hope so. But hopefully we can get you back on the show soon and help some more people. So thanks again. So everyone who's listening, go to davedee.com and get on to Dave's stuff. It's really good. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you for listening to Geniuses of Copywriting with Brian Casangina. To get the full transcript and all the resources mentioned on today's show, go to www.geniusesofcopywriting.com now.